The first explosions were heard by the local residents of the Hvardiis'ke and Azovske villages. These are neighboring settlements at about 6 a.m. on the 16th of August. An ammunition depot began to detonate 20 kilometers away from occupied Dzhankoi. Due to the scattering of the shells, about 2,000 residents were evacuated from the 5-kilometer emergency zone. Also, the police posts were placed at the entrances. At first, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation stated that the cause of the detonation was a fire on the territory of the temporary ammunition storage site of one of the military units. Then they announced that was a sabotage.
As a result of the sabotage, a military warehouse which is near the village of Dzhankoi was damaged. Damage was caused to a number of civilian facilities, including power lines, a power plant, a railway track, as well as a number of residential buildings. From the message on the website of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation.
Satellite images of the aftermath of the explosions at the Russian ammunition depot near the occupied Dzhankoi appeared in the evening that day. Kirill Ovsyany, a journalist with Schemes, an investigative news project, posted them on Twitter. In the armed forces of Ukraine, the explosions in the Dzhankoi district of the temporarily occupied Crimea were called a non-compliance with fire safety rules.
It is unknown what kind of means were used. The consequences impressed everyone. The detonation lasted several hours, and the enemy object was actually destroyed to the ground. We heard statements of the very respected New York Times publication, which, citing a high-ranking official in Ukraine, said the Ukrainian ghouls, the special forces, were already working. Such an idea has a right to exist.
As a result of the detonation of shells, the railway track, which passes through the village of Azovske, was damaged. This railway is the only route towards the mainland Ukraine from the territory of the occupied Crimea. Now trains are stopped in the area of Feodosia. It is 100 kilometers away from the epicenter of the explosions. According to Vladislav Seleznyov, Russian troops used Dzhankoi as the main railway junction for the supply of weapons and troops to Ukraine.
The Russian invaders have specialized repair and restoration units which restored the canvas in a fairly short time, but it became clear to all of us that the same logistics of the Russian troops, which is carried out mainly through the railway, is very vulnerable, since key infrastructure facilities can be destroyed. In fact, it doesn't matter how. It is more important to slow down the delivery of the enemy cargo as much as possible.
According to the local residents, the explosions were also heard on the territory of a military airfield in the Hvardiis'ke village near Simferopol on the same day. According to the Russian publication Kommersant, the Russian military leadership began to study the version of the attack by drones.
There are kamikaze drones that operate according to the other principles and algorithms, and it is extremely difficult for the enemy air defense to calculate their trajectory and the direction which they operate in. Therefore, it is very likely that at least 2 enemy targets in Crimea were hit by kamikaze drones. Whether it is true or not, I think we will not know until our victory. But the consequences of this work are extremely effective.
The American Institute for the Study of War suggested that the events in temporarily occupied Crimea are consistent with the plans of the armed forces of Ukraine.
Ukraine's focus on the Russian land lines, logistics and support assets in Crimea is consistent with the Ukrainian counteroffensives, which target bridges over the Dnipro River and also the Russian logistics elements in the occupied Kherson region. From the website of the Institute for the Study of War.
In turn, the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, in the evening address to the nation, called on residents of the temporarily occupied Ukrainian territories not to approach the Russian military facilities amid explosions on the peninsula.
Every day and every night we see new reports of the explosions on a territory which is temporarily occupied by the Russian invaders. I'm asking all people in Crimea, also other regions in the south of Ukraine and in the occupied areas of Donbass and Kharkiv region to be very careful. Please do not approach the military facilities of the Russian army and all the places where they store ammunition and equipment and where they keep their headquarters.
Earlier, on the 9th of August, near the settlement of Novofedorivka in temporarily occupied Crimea, the explosions took place on the territory of the Saki military airfield. At that time, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation stated that several aviation munitions had detonated. They also denied the involvement of the armed forces of Ukraine in this and the loss of aircraft which was located there. However, according to the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, 9 Russian military aircraft was destroyed in the Saki region. Reported by Diana Kolesnik, Yulia Bil, UATV News.